All right. According to StreamYard, I'm live, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to wait and make sure YouTube and StreamYard are yapping at each other. Sometimes that can be a problem. There we go. We are definitely talking to each other. There we go. So, welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Tonight, I'm looking at the satanic panic of the 1980s and 90s. I have a short documentary film, I think, by Canadian Broadcasting Company. So that kind of does a very general overview of the satanic panic from the 80s and 90s. And the funny part is, this whole satanic panic and stuff like it become very applicable probably on a regular basis. um, so yeah, I mean, it comes up. There's always some thing. I think here. Let me. Harvey brought. Fred brought one up. Yeah, like this. Lababaloob. Yeah, the doll thing. Yeah, like it comes up around and around. It keeps coming back around. Okay. Because when you believe in Satan or spiritual forces and all that, you get a lot of stuff. And tonight, it's the video is I'm reacting to is more of a triggering my own memories kind of thing. When the Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s came through, I was still very much a fundamentalist Pentecostal. The problem was I didn't really buy this. This is the one thing of the nonsense back then that I just didn't buy. I'm like, because I was directly involved in several things that they were accusing. Like, number one, I was a metalhead. And number two, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons from a very early age, like I think 10, something like that. A friend of mine introduced me to the game, and he was kind of a loner too, but he recognized a fellow kindred spirit. So we got playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I remember the Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s taking aim at metal music and all this other stuff. The real problem with these panics is some of the very real world stuff that they do. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing. We're going to talk about it. We're going to relate it a little bit, hopefully, to some of the things that are still going on today, how some Christians view spiritual life, particularly the devil and Satan and the rest of them, have not changed. They still have this nonsense stuff. So, but yeah, there's that. So, but first, let's get well, there is a goal in chat as always. That's my unobtrusive way of asking for money. This is the only time I'll mention I'm asking for money to support the streams. But yeah, there's a poll in chat, and whatever hat is chosen, I will wear if we reach the super chat goal of 5. And so that's kind of just paying for the stream and having a fun way to do it. I will wear that hat for the rest of the stream. And today we've got the Holy Bunny hat, which only appears on Saturdays anymore because it was immensely popular. So, but it's also a dangerous hat for me to wear because anything I say directly related to fangs becomes fact. just like all the other religions with their funny hats, when their main leaders with funny hats say it. So you have to be careful with the Holy Bunny hat. So luckily, every once in a while I get the other ones besides the Holy Bunny hat. But there you go. Let's get a roll call. We have, of course, I already mentioned Fred. Martin is here. Anne Marie, this stream is inspired by your suggestion, so I'm assuming that's why you're here. Cranky is here. I got a gift for Cranky here in a minute. I found a meme and I stole it. So, and so there's that. That's what memes are supposed to be. So then we got Ron too. Speaking of Cranky, Cranky mentions that Satan, Lucifer's a pretty mellow guy, and Dionysus knew really how to party. So there you go. But Cranky, I don't know, the recent Cracker Barrel controversy. They're removing the guy leaning against the thing. They're just going to have the sign saying Cracker Barrel. And I was perusing the net, and I found this, and I think of all the suggestions for renaming Cracker Barrel, I thought that this one might work the best. And as soon as I saw it, I thought of Cranky, and I said, we should name it Cranky Barrel. I think Cranky Barrel with this logo is perfect. So there you go. There you go. Oh, thanks, Fred. Appreciate it. It's Australian dollars, so, but I'll take it. I'm just picking on you. They're probably worth more than American dollars for all I know. But yes, I think we should go with Cthulhu Barrel instead, or Cranky Barrel. I think this is far more fitting. So, hey, Dragon Rider. Yeah, it has been a while, but welcome back. Appreciate anybody who shows up. But yes, I wanted to salute one of my longtime supporters of the channel, Cranky. I think we should rename all the Cracker Barrels Cthulhu or Cranky Barrel, and they all should go to seafood. I think that would be much more fitting than what we have now. So there's that. But yes. But I'm going to pull up our video tonight. Now, I'm not so much reacting to this video as I am kind of using it to trigger memory and to deal with topics. Okay. This video is by the Canadian Broadcasting Company. They did a documentary on the Satanic Panic, and it's about 8 minutes long. The rest of the videos I looked at were at least 35 minutes long that were documentaries about it. And I'm just going to do this one to see how everything goes. Okay, so I was right. It's not worth as much as Yankee dollars. That's why you give 10 instead of everybody else gives me 5 or 666, and you give me 10 to make up for the difference. Okay, fair enough. I love you, Fred. You know I love you. If I ever get to Australia, I'm looking you up because I figure we might have a good time. So there you go. But this video is, I can't remember how old it is. It doesn't seem too old. The commenter does a pretty good job of covering the basics of what happened. I'm going to throw in a lot of my reminiscences at the time of the Satanic Panic, I was in middle school and high school, and it lasted for pretty close to a damn decade. It started in 84, 85, really heavy, although its origins are deeper than that. I received criticism for heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons use way back when I was in middle school, which was like 81 to 83, somewhere in there. And yeah, so, I mean, I remember when we got to high school, it was 83, and George Orwell's 1984 was in every literature class. And so there's that. So, oh, you already have a chain restaurant. It's called Longshot. It's purity. Fair point. I'm just saying, Cranky, you could have taken over another franchise. Okay. I mean, I maybe the elder gods just aren't as aggressive about taking over shit anymore. They probably have gotten to the point where they don't give a damn. So there's that, but there's that. So you love you too. Okay, there you go. There you go. All right. So I'm going to use this video to kind of just to do some, yeah, no, it doesn't seem so far off anymore. No. Okay. But I'm going to use this video as kind of a way to trigger some things, and I'm going to reminisce a little bit about the Satanic Panic and what I remember and what I observed. The big thing for me was, this is where I realized that adult Christians could be very, very stupid. Okay. As a young teenage Christian, I realized that this religion thing could make people very, very dumb. And even though I was still pretty much a fundy Christian back then myself, it was like probably one of the first cracks that kind of made me like, well, if this Christianity this is what's based on, we have a problem, So I'm going to make the video a little bit larger and let's get rolling.
Back in the 80s and early 90s, A wave of troubling accusations swept across North America.
New and intense scrutiny on the activities of satanic cults.
Stories of devil worship and satanic cults corrupting young minds.
Unbelievable crime at the hands of satanic cults.
There were terrifying tales of secret satanic cults bent on tormenting and corrupting the young.
Okay. I remember, wow, the shirts in this. So yeah, I remember this all too well. So yeah, hey, Robin, good to see you. Good to see you. Appreciate you being here. But I remember like a lot of my discussions in church throughout my middle school and high school years were about satanic cults and satanic worship. I think this is the reason why Mike Warnke, the Christian comedian, was so popular, because he wrote the book, I think, The Satan Seller or something like that, and it was his testimony of being in the satanic cult, and then he had this big thing about Satan. The real book that kicked all this off, they're going to talk about, but I just don't remember a time during this time period where my pastor, or there wasn't literature in the church foyer. You know, we were Pentecostals, so we believed very much in this stuff, right? We believed in all the spiritualism. We believed in all that crap, demons, devils. I remember my pastor knew that I played Dungeons and Dragons. He literally hands me a pamphlet every month about the evils of Dungeons and Dragons. And I would read them, and I would come back the next week and say, this is bullshit. This guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. That was 99% of the time when I went back to my pastor and he would ask me what I thought about that pamphlet. I said, this guy doesn't even know what Dungeons and Dragons is. Or I said, so, you know, like, one of the pamphlets I got back then about that was, well, the monster manual mentions demon and devil. Yeah, because it's about the monsters or demons and devils, you know, so many times. I said, and then I remember that one really distinctly because I was in the pastor's office about it. And I reached over and grabbed Strong's Concordance and I looked up the word demon and devil. And you know what? They appear a lot in the Bible too. So what's your point? Okay, so, but this is the kind of mentality that panics like this create. Like there's this overarching fear of something that causes you to cloud your judgment and your rational judgment about things. So it's one of those phenomena that recurs. Like, you know, we're talking about like the dolls from Indonesia are making a big thing. I'm not going to try to say the name because I'll butcher it, but this recurs. But since the panic in the 80s and 90s, there's been several others where churches have gone into this satanic panic mode. And this is all devils and demons and stuff like that, particularly if charismatic Pentecostal circles, you'll see this a lot. But yes, at this time, I don't think that for an entire decade until I was well into my 20s, you know, like from the time I was 12 till, you know, like 25, I couldn't go to an Assembly of God church where I was ministering without something in the track rack or on the table about the Satan's work and satanic cults and all the evils that they were doing in society. It was hilarious. I look back at it now and I just laugh because it's like, and you want to talk about confirmation bias? Anything that even remotely looked like the devil, okay? And I now would make this observation. The reason why they went after Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal so much was this is what the kids were doing. And as we all know, Yahweh doesn't like competition to his attention. And so a lot of what the preachers were doing, in my opinion at the time, was they were trying to get rid of competition. Okay. They were trying to, like, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons probably every weekend. When I was a teenager. If I wasn't playing with my friends, I was like reading my books, making characters, you know. I was a DM every once in a while, so I'd sit back and make an adventure or something. And so I was always doing that. So it became more of a, I'm constantly under siege. And I loved metal music because I could recognize it for what it was. well, all of it's satanic. And then I'd go grab Metallica and play a song. Where is Satan in that song? That sounds like just the crappiness of life and trying to deal with it. And so it was much more, I remember these battles with my pastors all the time is what I remember, because I was one of those, I played Christian rock, Christian contemporary music and, whatever. And my pastors would yell about the demonic beat. It's like, there's nothing demonic about the beat. Well, that beat comes from Africa, and we all know those Africans are just demonic. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me, And so, yes, yeah, this is my point. I think a lot of this panic was more ginning up the idea that if we stayed close to God, then we wouldn't be influenced by Satan. And so you couldn't have fun in a fundy church. There's one thing that's true about fundamentalist churches. There's nothing fun about them. And so, yeah, I remember this so vividly as being a control mechanism, as well as a fear-mongering tactic. So there's that. Hey, Filbert, good to see you. And Wolf, make sure I get you in. But yes, there was a wave of this kind of a hysteria going over the country. So, all right, I'll make the video bigger again, and let's go into that. I'll have to try to remember to do both.
Heavy metal music had hidden satanic messages.
Possibly satanic messages on some rock music recordings.
And games like Dungeons and Dragons were luring kids to devil worship. And it got even stranger.
Allegations of physical and sexual abuse of children at a babysitting service.
The dark world of ritualistic child abuse.
There's a
Okay, I want to stop right there because it moved on. Okay, and this was actually quite common back then. I was surprised at how many daycare centers at the time were accused of this. Now, we need to also remember what was happening in the 80s. A lot of women were going to work, and they were using daycare facilities as a way of facilitating going to work. Like they were dropping their child off for childcare, if they weren't in school, things like that. And one of the things that fundamentalists were very big about in the 70s and 80s for sure was making sure traditional roles were maintained. And so, of course, these women stepping away from traditional roles has caused a rise in satanic ritualistic abuse in daycare centers. And so now these women fear sending their kids to daycare centers because they might be victims of Satan. Christianity was still like very much the majority in the United States at the time. So it's like there was definitely a propaganda edge to these accusations that really pisses me off, because a lot of people got accused of shit that they didn't do. Okay. And ended up paying a heavy price because Christians who were advocating for traditional roles started attacking daycare centers as places where Satan cults were and ritualistic child abuse and things like that. And the problem was there was actually a minimal amount of child abuse going on at these places, but it got so wrapped up sometimes in the Satanist stuff that a whole bunch of people got accused, and there may have well been some child abuse cases that got dismissed because it was attached to the satanic panic nonsense. And so you got to remember it was big propaganda. So when I remember when I was a kid, I was like, oh man, this is awful. But I never, you don't think about it like an adult when you're going through it as a kid, as a teenager. But now looking back at it, I could definitely see how they were using this satanic panic to kind of try to, you women, you're going off into non-traditional roles. And look what's happening. You're setting up your children out of your sight, and they're going to be abused by Satanists. And absolute propaganda shit. Okay, just garbage. But that's what they were doing. So this is some of the stuff that was happening.
widely held opinion that what happened at the daycare was the devil's handiwork.
Underground networks of Satanists were infiltrating daycares and preschools to physically and sexually abuse children in occult rituals. Much of what fueled the panic was not real. These claims led to a wave of high-profile criminal trials in the US, Canada, and beyond. The cases often followed a similar pattern. An initial report of physical or sexual abuse at a daycare would snowball, taking on a life of its own. Overzealous interveners, everyone from parents to police to counselors, would question children, some as young as 2 years old, in ways now known to produce false allegations.
And this is the thing about this, okay? And this is where Western society kind of learned you have to be very careful with how you question children because they're very susceptible to suggestion. They also like to please the adults around them that they consider important, and they have a high imagination. And so a lot of this reporting back then ended up being, she's very right, it would take on a life of its own. I remember so many of these cases when I was a teenager in high school and later on as a young adult when I was in college. We'd watch the news. It was like, well, yeah, you got to mention Judas Priest. I'll mention Judas Priest, but they've already, they hit the heavy metal and Dungeons and Dragons stuff already in this video, although I think it'll come up again. But yes, but there was the real serious side of this panic was this, like there was the satanic networks were taking over daycares, and you can see the propaganda of all you women are going to work and you're putting your kids in the hands of Satan. You want to talk about, holy shit, this notion of women should stay home and make babies and watch them at home mentality of a lot of this, it's definitely there. Like a lot of women were going to work in the 80s and the double income thing was starting and all that, and daycare was becoming a big option. And a lot of women were leaving their abusive marriages and saying, screw this. And all of a sudden the church comes up with that. Well, that's all the work of Satan, and you're putting your hands in the kids of Satan. And that's why Satanists are infiltrating this shit in order to get kids to abuse. So yeah, it was that bad. It was that bad. I remember that very, very well. All these people being accused of satanic stuff. So, hey, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it. It's all well. I'm doing fine. The weather has actually been perfect, so I'm not overheated. I'm not overstimulated, and I feel really good actually. So, been a good week. So. One does not mention Judas Priest. Yes. Yeah. As I've gotten, it's interesting though with Judas Priest though, Cranky, the older I get, the more I have an appreciation for that and the music. Like, back then they were just kind of like another group to me. And then, I was more into Metallica and other bands like Iron Maiden and things like that, and Def Leppard, and the hair metal scene was, if you could sift through the bullshit, you could find some pretty good music, but it was rare. But yes, Judas Priest, I've gained more of an appreciation for the older I get. So them and Blue Oyster Cult and a few others, Go Go Godzilla is now one of my favorite. When you get past the funny lyrics and listen to the guitar work on Go Go Godzilla, oh my God. So, yes, anything can be interpreted to mean anything. The problem with a lot was going on back then is we now recognize that there are certain ways to question children that you have to do. And if you don't depart from that, you can get false information. And the problem, of course, as we all know with testimonial evidence, for those of us that are atheists that study the Gospels, testimonial evidence is shit. Okay. Like it's so subject to personal interpretation. Even kids do it. So there's that. Rob Halford, I can believe that he's still going. So he just did some Ozzy tributes. So I'm sure now that's echoing through the cosmos. Rob Halford singing to Ozzy. All right. Singing Ozzy stuff. So there we go. But yes, of course, heavy metal kind of leaned into this a little bit too, because there was a lot of album covers were definitely satanistic imagery, but I think they leaned into it on purpose because it made them more popular. Christians don't seem to realize this, but when they emphasize something and they draw attention to it. It probably got more attention to it than it deserved. Okay. Like there was, I think a lot of these metal bands did the satanic imagery because they knew it pissed off the fundamentalists and not because they really believed in anything. But yeah, they got accused of a lot of things. Ozzy Osbourne's a good example. I don't think Ozzy ever really believed in the devil. At least not that I know of. I know he believes he was going to heaven. He still was a believer, but yeah. So yeah, definitely. They very much leaned in heavy into it, but it's like, they were leaning in heavy to it because that's what they were being accused of. And so they would just say, yeah, F you. And away they would go. So, yeah, they loved Eddie. Yes. The people of the Satanic Panic loved Iron Maiden. They thought that Iron Maiden was living proof that Iron Maiden was Satanist. I'm like, no, just no. They weren't. So.
Children began to talk about animal sacrifices, blood rituals, secret tunnels, even cannibalism. Police would lay charges, prosecutors would take them to court, and the media would report uncritically on what seemed to be a growing threat.
Authorities searched frantically for evidence of an apparent ritual abuse epidemic across North America.
Some cases would fall apart at trial or during appeal. Others resulted in wrongful convictions. Many of the accused spent years in prison, while others faced financial ruin and damaged reputations. As it turns out, the Satanic Panic may have its origins in Canada.
Okay, now that is a pretty that's a pretty good statement of what happened. The real problem with these panics, okay, and I have to get real here with everybody. The problem when you let religion get you in this panic atmosphere is a lot of innocent people are going to get hurt. And when I say religion doesn't do us any favors anymore, and we need to get rid of it, that's why I'm an anti-theist, it's shit like this. Okay, the Satanic Panic is a perfect illustration of when you give religious people way too much credence, more than they deserved, where accusations become fact, where claims become evidence. Okay. This is what was happening. Like all you had to do is point the finger at a daycare center and say, they're connected to devil worship. Go look. And the police would go look. There's no evidence of it. There's, you got these children giving, all this stuff. But when you look at how they were questioned, the idea of religious animalistic sacrifice, human sacrifice, cannibalism, all that stuff was implanted by the interviewer. Okay. Or somebody else in the adult sphere had given them that idea. Okay. And then their imaginatively little kid brains just ran with it. Okay. So it's like my problem with the Satanic Panic is, as I was doing research for this, Anne-Marie, I know you're in chat. You were the one that brought this to my attention. Let's do this. The problem with the Satanic Panic, when you look up documentaries about Satanic Panic, there are still Christian organizations defending it. Like, we got off of this and we should have stayed there kind of thing. There are still people. Now, there are also Christians very embarrassed by it, doing documentaries about how it's embarrassing. But there's also people defending the Satanic Panic, that it wasn't really a panic, that it was genuinely true still. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, this lady is from the Canadian Broadcasting Company. So for her to admit that it's Canada's fault, blame Canada is actually true on something, I'm amazed. But yes, but this is the example of how something can spread through something and go from one place to another. I remember, I said it earlier, but I remember there was always pamphlets or books on our table at church in the foyer about Satan worship and the satanic cults. And, because we're Pentecostals, we believe in all that stuff. And so it's like, I don't know. It really fed into our confirmation bias so well that the Satanic Panic just grows that way. But one of the things that really, really bothered me when I was doing research for this on the 1980s and 90s Satanic Panic is there are still Christian organizations that justify it. Like this was when Christianity was really allowed to fight the Church of Satan and try to get rid of it. And now they've stifled us with all this bullshit like evidence. Okay. And I was shocked because I'm like trying to find a documentary on this subject that we could react to. And that's why I chose this one, because it's one of the few that's A, short enough, and B, isn't biased by somebody's religious opinion. Okay. So it's like, yeah. So we're going to blame Canada for another thing. Bob Larson. Yes. I think I remember it. I remember. Yes. So Pink Floyd. Yes. And the thing is, I remember you speak of AC/DC's Back in Black. I played football for the local high school here in Reed City, and our colors are red and black. Okay, mostly black though, with red tint. And that year that I played for them, we were in all black uniforms, head to toe, and we had red striping down the side of the pants and red stripes on the sleeves and a red logo on the side of our helmet. And we petitioned that when we entered the field that we would pay AC/DC's Back in Black. And it was controversial because this was 1986. And but we got it done. And it's still, I think, a Reed City tradition once a year to come out to Back in Black. So, and we wore our all black uniform and hit the field. And yeah, it drove our parents nuts. But this is the kind of mentality people had back then. I don't think today, oh man, these Christians are weird. You have no idea how weird Christians can get. I mean, this is why when Christopher Hitchens says, remember what they were like before. Okay. Now they're ingratiating, and, now it's not so much in the United States. Like the Christians have come unhinged. The unhinged Christians are unhinged again. And so it's become weird again because they feel empowered. But back then, these people were having a massive influence on society over bullshit, okay, that people just believed. So kiss bro if you're Oh, yeah. I remember having a discussion with some guy about Kiss once. And he says, I've gotten to the point in music where I kind of sort of understand Kiss. After that, I'm kind of lost. So we remember. Yeah, I mean, I could have, but I wanted this first discussion to be about what it was, okay? Because I think there's enough damaging stuff here, Cranky. Like it's funny, okay, in and of itself. But when she says that its origins come in Canada, she's not too far off. Hey, Elizabeth, good to see you. But yeah, all right. She just made this statement that Canada might be to blame for the Satanic panic. So maybe Blame Canada isn't completely wrong as a song. So we'll see what happens. But
when asked about the spark that set off the hellfire, many experts point to this book, Michelle Remembers, published in 1980, written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor and his former patient, Michelle Smith. The book provided a template for the allegations of satanic ritual abuse that followed. Pastor claimed he helped Smith recover repressed memories from her early childhood of a terrifying initiation into a secret cabal of Satanists operating near Victoria, British Columbia.
They would put me in cages. They would sacrifice animals. They would have a lot of candles and chanting and bizarre things I had never seen.
Did people think?
Okay, I want to stop right there. This is the woman who had the repressed memories that just talk. Okay, like repressed memory psychology has absolutely been hit right between the legs in the last 20 years. Like it's the problem with it is especially when you do it with adults, is adults can make shit up pretty well too. The problem with repressed memory therapy is it's led to a lot of accusation, not just in the Satanic Panic, but yes, this book. Every time I watched a video this week about the Satanic Panic in the last 2 days, this book is mentioned. And I remember this book because it was on my pastor's bookcase. Let's see if I can find a cover here. Right there. It has several different covers. This is one of them, but this is the book. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, it's absurd. But you need to understand something, Elizabeth. People believed it back then. It was part of training. You have to read this book as part of training to recognize satanic cults in certain cult classes. I knew two of my pastors had this book on their shelf, and they were Pentecostal pastors, of course. So it makes sense to them that they would believe some woo stuff. But yes, it was very, very inappropriate too. I think they divorced their spouses and got married to each other. I can't remember that. Yeah, they can definitely lie better than children. And children lie pretty good. So I know, I used to raise some. It became this book was sold so many copies, it made them a lot of money. Okay, you need to remember that this made them a lot of money. Okay, and their relationship was very inappropriate. And so the funny thing about this is neither one of them have ever retracted anything from this book. And I think they still sell it. I'm not sure. Somebody can look that up for me. But as I understood it from watching some of the videos about this book, it's still people still buy it. So it's interesting that this is the start. And it was in Canada, okay, that this started. So yes, Cranky, South Park's Blame Canada did come to my brain at that moment, but I wasn't going to sing it because I like Canadians for the most part, and I don't like to think of them this way. So, I mean, I live in Michigan, so they're right across the border. I'm trying not to piss off my neighbors. So, kind of thing. Yeah, they're kind of stuck. And so, yes, but she's very accurate. This seems to be kind of everybody who talks about the satanic panic of the 80s and 90s points back to this book published in 1980. Now, like all book publications back then, it takes a while for the ideas to build up steam. So it was 2 or 3 years later that the panic actually started. But it became the template of interviewing children at daycare centers, okay, getting some sort of false accusation, arresting the adult based on the accusation of the child. No evidence, no physical evidence, nothing, just the accusation of a child based on the techniques in this book. Yeah, Bob Larson, yes, he's an excellent. Dead air sounds like he was using this. Yes, I do believe he was. Bob Larson's definitely uses this book as a source. This book right here becomes the centerpiece of the satanic panic. It's the thing that started it. It's kind of the thing that everybody refers back to. And this whole idea of the satanic church taking over and doing stuff. It comes from this idea. So she's dead on about this. So, maybe we do have something to blame Canada for. So, yeah, they were coerced and fed answers. Okay. And so a lot of people, like she mentioned earlier, the real seriousness thing is people lost 3 or 4 or 5 years of their life in prison before their convictions were overturned. Because a jury of your peers that believes in the satanic panic is going to convict you. So no matter what you say, no matter what the evidence is. And a lot of them got dismissed early before trial. Another chunk got dismissed on appeal. When you get to a different court away from the panic, people got dismissed. But some people got convicted on this shit. And that's the real damage of it. So, yeah, he's a cool guy, actually. I found a page on Facebook called Satan that I follow now. And, he makes some pretty valid points. I'm just saying. But yeah, but the idea behind the Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s. Definitely Michelle remembers that book, did everything. Yeah, I mean, it's great that the problem with sexually oriented crimes, okay, is that even if you're completely exonerated, like the stigma of just being accused of a crime like that still lingers. That's something society has to work on. If somebody, it's pretty clear that they are innocent, they're a victim. Okay, they're a victim of somebody else. And when you deal with that kind of language, and so it's like that's the problem. Like a lot of these people, of course, I think like most of the daycares that were accused got shut down. Very few survived. Just the reputation hit caused them to go out of business. Okay, you can't if for 2 or 3 years you don't have any kids showing up, you're not going to make it very far in the daycare business. Okay, so yeah, it ends up being a real problem for a lot of people because they lost their livelihood, they lost their jobs, they lost their reputation. I know several had to change their name, okay, in order to do. There really is, in order to move, and they had to like move to some other part of the country where nobody would recognize them, or it's like it became a real bad thing for a lot of people. Okay, and yeah, self-deletion. There was a few self-deletions because of it. So this panic thing started a lot of harm, and it's all because people believe in the devil. The literal devil is a real person, and his demons are out there doing stuff. And so yeah, you're not surprised they had to change the names. I wouldn't be. There is, in a sense, there is no exoneration. Like you can be legally exonerated, but socially you can still be an outcast because there's always going to be somebody. Oh no, they were being worked by the devil, and the system just let them go. And it's like, yeah. So there's that.
Did people think this was a fantasy, that you'd made this all up? It was such hocus pocus that it couldn't possibly have happened?
Well, I was one of the first to stand up and start to recount these kinds of things and to bring it publicly.
There was no evidence or witnesses to Smith's account, yet Pastor presented the book as a true story.
The hard evidence is...
Okay, yeah. This is where this guy, and I pause it so his face is on the screen. Yeah, he's an asshole. Okay. When he was finally confronted by a lot of this stuff, his whole thing was he presented it as a true story. And later on, he kind of said, well, it's a true story of our interviews and what we discovered in the interviews. And it's like, there's no evidence for this. There were no witnesses. When they looked up some of the stuff that she said should be there in the book, it wasn't there. You caused an entire panic, dude, based on poor evidential standards to begin with. And people lost their livelihood. They lost their reputations. They were imprisoned because of your bullshit. And then when somebody tried to hold you accountable for it, you got defensive because you made too much fucking money over this book. Let's be fair. You just made a bunch of money off this book, and you weren't going to recant it because then sales would stop. Let's be honest. Okay. And he's an asshole. I got concurrence on this. Okay. Hey, Laura, good to see you. It's a jerk. You're trying to be nice. I think worse thoughts of him, Elizabeth. Like this is the living definition of a charlatan and a fraud here. Like somebody who wants to justify their research and it's shitty research. Okay, like this guy is it. Okay, and that's just crap to me. So, hey, thanks, Martin. That's 3, 2 more to go, and I'll wear the silly hat and have to change earphones, but that'll be fine. We're halfway done with this video. I wanted it to be short because it's more, I'm trying to reminisce some of the stuff that happened. I was old enough to kind of see what was going on. And when I look back at this time of the Satanic Panic, it's like, this is where I really started to question whether adults knew what they were doing. Like, it's like, there's no evidence for this. Like, and my whole thing was I was listening to metal and playing D&D. I was a good Christian kid, I wasn't smoking, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't trying to, do every girl, I wasn't, I was the epitome of the good Christian fundamentalist boy. And I was living that life. But I played Dungeons and Dragons and I loved heavy metal. It was my only two vices, according to the Pentecostal church. And when they started coming out with these accusations, I would like go to my Dungeons and Dragons book and open it up. I'm like, I don't do that. That's just made up shit. It's lying. And so it's like, yeah. I had a similar conspiracy about daycare being Freemason base of operations and a pedophile bottle. Yes. Yeah, he's a disgrace to the family. The McCarthy witch hunt. Yes, there's definitely that too. Yes, I never got accused. No, but a lot of people never got accused of it, of that stuff. Sexual assault is a different accusation, even if you completely exonerate yourself. Like I know there's some men I know that literally had to uproot, change their name and move to a completely different area of the country. Some of them even left the country and moved to other countries. So it's like, that's how bad it gets for some. So there's that. There's a lot of conspiracy theories, but this was one of the worst ones. And it's because of this guy right here. I will agree with that. Like his book with Michelle's remembering things. Yeah, it's crappy research. It's crappy this and crappy that.
Difficult to find, because if a child is sacrificed, that child's body isn't going to be left. If it's an Orthodox Satanic cult, they're going to burn the body and they're going to eat it during ceremony, so they'll leave no evidence around.
Okay, so here's his defense. The lack of evidence is because they destroy the evidence. Now, let's never mind the fact that you would still have other evidences besides the body, okay, if this kind of crap was going on. A good forensic scientist would have had a field day with that comment, by the way. If you get a chance, you probably should. I think it might be, depending on your dad, I guess. You know your dad better than me, but it might be an interesting conversation. You might learn something, but yes. So yeah, but this is a very interesting statement by him, because he's basically saying the reason there's no evidence for what I say in the book is because the satanic people are really good at covering the evidence. And so why do you even believe it in the first place? Well, you have one woman's supposed childhood remembrances. I'm serious. It might be a good discussion. It might. I mean, he's a retired psychologist. He might have some interesting, because they ate it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened. I mean, I'm not trying, I know you're trying to be funny, but they actually made that excuse. Like, well, the cannibalistic atheists ate it, and the rest of them burned it, so that's why you don't find the children. But it's like, do we have reports of missing children to go along with the children you say are disappearing? Well, we had missing children stories, but not necessarily connected with the daycares that they were getting accused. So, yeah. It's less popular than Pokemon, and it fell under the radar. Yes. Yeah. And see, and the funny thing is, Dragon, right, with the whole Pokemon, Digimon thing, one of my granddaughters is into Pokemon, and she's starting to buy cars, and her parents are like, why are you doing that? And it's like, because it's fun. It's like, she doesn't get into all that crap. So yeah, they ended up all being BS. There were a lot of investigative reports. The real perfect storm here is you had this guy promoting his book as a true story. You had a bunch of gullible Christian types that believe in spiritualism and believe in the satanic church being a force of evil. And then you had a media that was very uncritical of the stories. Like, the media at that time is absolutely culpable for this, because they could have nipped this in bud with a few investigative journalism stories even back then. And they could have dealt with it and gotten rid of it, but they didn't, because it was sensational and it sold papers. And so they kept the story running. Instead of being responsible journalists and shutting it down, they kept it running. I remember it was in the news. It was on all 3 channels on TV. I know some people don't believe that actually existed, but once upon a time, you could only get 3 channels, and one of them was kind of fuzzy and snowy. So, so yes, there's always somebody's concerns that get raised when a child is missing, and you should be able, if it's a satanic cult that was stealing the children, you would figure that out pretty quick. Okay, like it was absolutely laughable. Yes, Warnke didn't help either. Mike Warnke appeared as an expert on Satanism. It turned out later his whole story was mostly bullshit. Like, he didn't have a cult of 500 followers. He only had a cult of like 6 or 7, and he had this awesome testimony that he embellished, and then he became an expert on it, and that didn't help either. Okay, this is a perfect storm of a bunch of people that were considered experts that aren't, presenting falsehoods and bad evidential stories and stuff like that and getting away with it. Hey, there's a group today that sounds familiar like that, apologists. I'm just going to take my way with the apologists now. But this is kind of how apologists work. You have this belief system, especially pre-suppers, so it never came up. Oh, yeah, you should talk to him about it. Can't buy Pokemon because adults are buying all of them and scalping. Yes, that's kind of what's happening. But back then, I get it. My granddaughter has managed to get some because people have extra copies and give them to her. So they're very nice to her. So yes, the excusagist. And there were a lot. What he just said is an excusagist idea. Like, well, the reason we don't have any evidence for Jesus rising from the tomb is because, the Roman Empire covered up the evidence or some shit like that. The reason we don't have evidence of the Red Sea is, too much time has passed for their evidence to exist. And so it is absolutely the same type of apologetic arguments that you see that were leading to the Satanic Panic. They were just making shit up, and some of it stuck to the wall, unfortunately. And it's a perfect description of somebody who, even like Warnke, he became an expert in Satanism, kind of like several other people that have degrees in philosophy and become experts in scientific cosmology for some reason, or guys with mechanical engineering degrees at the creation institutes around the world suddenly become experts in biology. It's like there were a lot of people that actually studied some of this stuff that were touted as experts, but they were experts in the wrong field. And nobody was using evidential reason back then. And like I said, the media was culpable in this, in the fact that they didn't really do investigative journalism on this stuff. It was a sensational story, and it sold papers, it sold time, it sold commercials. And so they didn't investigate it very well either. So you had this perfect storm of stuff that happened where nobody did anything. Warnke is a good example. When I was a Christian, I kind of loved his comedy until Cornerstone blew the lid off of him. Like, it was a Christian organization that finally called Warnke to the carpet. Like, your stories have too many holes in them to be true. Okay, so but he was very much taken seriously, Fulbert, because he became an expert in Satanism because he led a satanic church, quote unquote. So, hey, St. Brush. The disciples ate the body. Well, it's as good and valid an excuse as any other. And thanks for the donation. 666 is the most welcome donation here, by the way. Because I don't know why, because people think atheists worship the devil. I don't understand. I just don't understand. Still thinks he's great. Okay. Manson. Okay, there we go. You can't believe Moses parted the sea. What can't you believe? See if read you find. What was a mistranslation? Yeah, that's usually what happens. There's always an excuse. The fact that there's no evidence for this is just, that's just an inconvenience to a lot of these people, to apologists, and to a lot of the people at the Satanic Panic. I remember having so many conversations with my pastor about metal music and Dungeons and Dragons because it was, like I wasn't, I wasn't dating and having sex with my Christian girlfriend. I wasn't smoking pot. I was, like I said, I was like a pretty good kid. And the only thing the only crack in my armor they could find was I played D&D on the weekends with my friends and had all the books, and I listened to metal. Okay. And I even listened to Christian metal, which surprisingly sounded a lot like various groups in real metal. So there were a few good groups, but yeah. Oh man. Well, it's an old story. It's the Number of the Beast in Revelation. You can also, Iron Maiden does a great song called The Number of the Beast, I believe. Great riffs, as I recall. So you worship Angelina, but that's an entirely different matter. Okay. Of a zealot, yes. Yeah, she's still out there too. But yes, so this is the origin story of the Satanic Panic of the 1980s. This book in 1980 being published by a guy who refused to be accountable for the bullshit that he put in it. So let's see if we get some other stuff.
Michelle Remembers was also one of the first books to suggest that underground satanic networks were not only real, but were infiltrating communities in an organized effort. Anyone could be a Satanist, your next-door neighbor, your dentist, or your daycare provider. It was an idea that stuck with many readers.
The book is called Michelle Remembers.
The book became an overnight sensation, and Pastor and Smith received a lucrative publishing deal, about $1.2 million in today's dollars.
Okay, let's understand something. They made in today's dollars 1.2, and I don't know how old this video is. It's probably closer to $1.5 million that these two made off of this book. So the moment somebody starts criticizing the book for factual nature, what do the two of them do? They absolutely doubled down. Okay, because they were not going. He made money, a lot of money. Okay, they both made money because I think, as I recall, didn't both of them divorce their spouses and then marry each other? So she got all that money too. Okay, so yeah, well, that's kind of a lot of people, like if you're in the church and you're not like at the you might miss some of this stuff, but the book was there. But they made a lot of money off this book and retired very well. So the Number of the Beast, yes. Keep an open mind. Just don't make sure it's so open that your brains fall out. I prefer to keep a rational mind, but yeah, Monkey did A Number of the Beast too. Yeah, but I can laugh about that. It's not as good. It's not as good. Yeah, people were seeing 667. That's why it comes up, because it's the Number of the Beast. And Iron Maiden took a hell of a lot of heat for that song from Christians. Like, I remember going, like, I don't know if anybody remembers the Peters Brothers, but the Peters Brothers were the one that took on rock and roll. And then Jimmy Swaggart wrote his book, Religious Rock, Religious Rock and Roll, where he said they were still using the same Satanic beat. And, it's like, it was a whole big satanic panic controversy. Like, we shouldn't even be using their music. We shouldn't be doing this. And then later on, Christian contemporary music's people kind of won the day because everybody loved the music. And then I remember Dungeons and Dragons as a concept got exonerated because somebody came along and made a Christian role-playing game called Dragon Raid. And and that game was awful. As somebody who played D&D for years and then played Dragon Raid, it was an awful game because it was just way too much work to creating an adventure. Like, you had to use pre-published adventures. You had to, because there was so much, trying to guide the lesson. Of course, it became theologically controversial because it presented different theologies. So there's that. So you're on a highway to hell. Okay. So there we go. We have a few people on the way. on there because they're so scared of the number. Yes, still. To be convinced, if the evidence is convincing, open does not mean accepting. Tipper Gore. Oh, yes. Tipper Gore and Purple Rain. Oh, my God. Oh, sorry. A bunch of us Gen Xers are going to have really bad flashback moments. Yeah, that was really the kind of the irony of Dungeons and Dragons, because I try to tell my heroes are fighting the demons. My heroes are fighting the devils. And you had to be pretty powerful as a character to pull that shit off too. Like you had to be a pretty high level. Like we're talking late, epic adventures of heroes that are well developed by that time, right? Like you didn't fight the big devils right out the gate, because you'd get slaughtered. First level parties are always difficult to make fun because you just don't have a lot of power. And I prefer like mid development anyway, when the characters are starting to get enough power to be fun, but not so powerful that they're stupid. So, it's like, that's kind of where I like to stay. So Prince's music, is it appropriate for children? Surely you jest, Elizabeth. Come on. Grind isn't appropriate for children. Oh, gosh. You want to talk about an artist who puts sex in every song. Yes, record burnings. Did that. Participated in 3 of record burnings. Did not submit my own records to the fire, but I watched a lot of other people do it. What was the other thing? One of the things that shocked me is like we did a book burning once at a Pentecostal church, and that should have made me know that this is probably a bad thing, because I still have this attitude about books that I don't care if it's bullshit. I'm not going to burn one, but I remember going, and I remember somebody submitted their Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books to the fire because they taught magic. Like, I'm not even kidding. Okay. I'm like, Tolkien's a Catholic. Yeah. It's like, it's like, it got ridiculous, folks. It really did. I mean, it got silly. Okay. Because I have been to this stuff. Okay. When I was younger and up to my young adult days, when I was pastoring Assembly of God churches, there was still stuff like this going on. And it continued to be, it's a waste of vinyl. I mean, it's a waste of vinyl, but yeah, you didn't hide it. It wasn't like in the corner. I would love to get back with the group again. Maybe when I'm retired, we're all retired and old in nursing homes. We'll have a Dungeons and Dragons group for that. The Number of the Beast sister. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we brought in a girl. Okay, or a guy. All right, well, that's 5. It looks like we made it. The Holy Bunny Hat one. Imagine my shock and surprise. Hold on just for a second. I got to turn off my earphones on this one. And then switch to the other one so I can wear the hat. But, we made it. We made it. The Number of the Beast sister. This is why I keep you around, Cranky. This is why I keep you around. Oh, but here we go. The Holy Bunny hat has been donned. Anything I say about fangs and fangsology is now canon, so I'm not going to say much. I don't know, Elizabeth. He felt there was magic in it, teaching of magic in it, and so he burned it. I knew somebody who actually did that with C.S. Lewis too. I didn't see it, but somebody said that C.S. Lewis, they submitted their Chronicles of Narnia to the fire because it taught magic. Like, you got to understand, in certain fundamentalist spheres, the satanic panic, as much as I laugh about it, like these bunny ears on my head, back then the satanic part of it, the magic part of it, was taken if you taught magic, if you were a witch or a wizard or anything like that, that was evil. And I knew people that lived in that world. Yes, I know the irony is very present, Fred. What, miracles are not magic? What? Are you serious? but yes, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, because a lot of people considered back then that if it had anything to do with magic, there was spell casting or something in it, it was evil, and they would burn it. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't know. It was a bad scene back then in the Panic, especially in Pentecostal churches. I think Pentecostal churches are weirdos, so everybody kind of holds them at arm's length anyway. And being in the Pentecostal church, people don't scrutinize you as much. Like if an Episcopal church decided to burn a bunch of albums, that would make the news. Okay. But Pentecostals burning albums and burning books, yeah, that's every day. So, but yeah. Yeah, probably not. Probably just enjoyed the books. Like a lot of people buy books. People still read C.S. Lewis because they think it's a cute story. They don't believe in Jesus or anything. So, yes, Mr. Fang. Yes, this is the holy bunny hat, and it's what makes me a prophet of fangs. And I don't wear it very often because anything I say about fangs is canon at that point. So I'm very careful about what I say about fangs when I'm wearing the holy bunny hat. So, yeah, I suppose you could take that viewpoint where he was a Catholic, so he was a Satanist indirectly, and so they wanted to burn the influence out of this. So, yeah, you got to remember, this is also the time. When was Frank Peretti's Piercing the Darkness published? I'll bet it was during the Satanic Panic. I'll bet money that's when he became popular. He hit a niche, okay, of people that believed in spiritual battles between angels and demons, and he did that. So yes, yeah, Lewis is a devout Christian, but there's magic. There's deep magic in the Chronicles of Narnia, and we can't have magic. Magic is evil. That's Satanist. That's the devil's work. Never mind that Jesus walking on water was kind of magic. So. Yeah, Protestants hate Catholics. They're just not obvious about it because they need the Catholics to vote their way. So, yeah, he got very heavy-handed. Yeah, pray covering. Yes, yeah. There was a lot of this obsession with that stuff. So, but yes. So, well, but back to the video. Let's see what else this has been actually a pretty good video about what the Panic did, okay, and the highlights of it. So
it also established Pazder as a sought-after expert on the burgeoning phenomenon of ritual abuse, a term he coined himself. There was even talk of a movie deal with Dustin Hoffman playing Pazder.
And if Dustin Hoffman had done that, I would have felt a lot less about him. So, but yes, there was movie deals, or they made a shit ton of money. The guy became an expert on ritualistic abuse based on an interview that he did with a woman where he revealed her repressed memories about Satanistic religious abuse. So, yeah, but there was a whole bunch of stuff that yeah, every hero needs a villain. God needs opposition, and Christianity provided it. I can only say this. Yahweh had a lot of opposition, more than the devil. Our hero Fangs opposed Yahweh too back in the day. So that's already canon, so I can say that.
McMartin preschool trial in Manhattan Beach, California, where 7 daycare workers were accused of ritually abusing children. Pazder was flown down to be an expert consultant in satanic cults for the prosecution. In another ritual abuse case in Bakersfield, California, Michelle Remembers was used as training material by social workers who believed they had uncovered an extensive satanic pedophile ring. Specialists in satanic ideology were suddenly in high demand as more and more ritual abuse cases went to trial. In Austin, Texas, another self-styled satanic cult expert was used to secure the convictions of daycare owners Dan and Fran Keller, who spent decades in prison before being exonerated. It became increasingly common to see...
Okay, I want you to think about that. You're accused of absolute bullshit. The evidence is bullshit. You end up in prison for decades, literally at least 20 years. And finally, you're exonerated because of lack of evidence. So, yes. So there's that. Yes, expert is in quotes. But yes, there's a lot of people during this time period that faced massive prison terms. Like you think, oh, a couple of years, but there was also a few like that couple there that got 20 years for something they didn't even do. Okay, based on what expert testimony said. Oh, they're obviously involved in ritualistic satanic abuse. Okay. And yes, you should laugh at the hat at the same time I'm putting quotes, because there wasn't any experts really saying that. Okay. It's like real experts were not called here. And that's the bad part. But yes, yeah, it's like they got 20 years for this shit. Okay. Until somebody reviewed their case. Oh, this is all part of the Satan, and they were finally released. Now, don't worry. One of the things that some governments offer is if you're falsely accused, they give you money, okay, like a lot of money, to try to make up for everything you lost in life. It doesn't really do. And often a lot of these people will also sue whoever accused them if they're still around, or if there's an organization to sue, they'll sue for even more and win, because you ruined their life. There's no way like that couple. What are they going to do now? Like, what are they going to do to make a living now? What are they going to do? They've spent 20 years behind bars, and how do you make up all the lost stuff of that? This is why false accusations have to be taken very seriously, and the people who make them decried. So yeah, never rely on solely called that. But that's kind of what happened in that case. I remember that case. Like, there was no evidence in any of these cases of actual abuse. That was the thing that was missing. Okay. But the expert testimony said, oh, they must be connected. I don't have any idea. That's one case. After doing this research, Elizabeth, I want to look up that case and why it took them so long. But yeah, they were a daycare center owner just taking care of kids, and they ended up in prison for at least 20 years. So it's like, I don't know the full details of it, but when I heard that in this video, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. It took that long. I don't know. All because of a satanic panic. So when people say, oh, it's just innocent things that Christians do, and they get all worked up about this stuff, it's not really a big deal. Well, people go to fucking prison and lose a lot of their life because of this shit. And it pisses me off that we let them get away with it. So yeah, it irritates me. So, and then we tell, well, religion does basically good. I don't know, that kind of shit for these people. Okay. Yeah. So it's like, you can't make up for what you do to people when you throw them in prison for a long time. And no amount, you can give them a lot of money so they can live peacefully the rest of their lives, but that's about all you can do. You have taken away a lot of their life and destroyed it. And sorry, an apology and a large check doesn't really make up for it, yeah. So there's that. But yeah.
Ritual crime training seminars led by psychologists, church groups, and even the police. This is former FBI agent Ken Lanning, who studied the spread of the panic in the 80s.
All these people network with each other, and they'd all get together and go to seminars and discussions, and they'd be told this is what Satanists do and this is how they do it. And so all that is planted through the use of these kinds of techniques, hypnosis and other ways, that cause the spread of this kind of stuff. So many people say, well, you can't identify these cases unless you've been trained to learn about them. And some of that training becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The commercial
the FBI kind of eventually dismissed all this shit. It took them a bit, because the thing about generating evidence, actual real evidence that'll hold up in court, it takes a lot longer than to make an accusation. I think that's patently obvious, but it's like, it's one of those things that you saw for a while, and then all of a sudden the FBI started saying, no, that's shitty evidence. We can't use, you got to actually have proof of satanic rituals. Like, finding a temple with an actual pentagram in it might be good for starters. Like it's just the standard of evidence for a lot of these cases was just very low. You just bring in the satanic experts, they would testify that this is how this works. The person being accused, they're on like, but yeah, that's bullshit. But it doesn't matter because the jury is taken over by the emotions of the case. Because let's be honest, messing with kids is always very emotional, and juries like want to protect the kids. A good person, people want to protect kids, and so it's like they get caught up in that, and then the next thing you know, they're convicting people that did nothing just because the experts said so. And it's like, well, the experts testified that this is a satanic cult. And so that's what they were involved in. Never mind, there was no physical evidence. Never mind, there's no photographic evidence. Never mind, the bodies disappear because they either eat them or burn them. So it's the same thing the apologists do. Like this excuses why there isn't any evidence isn't evidence. Okay. It's like, there's a lot of people that are innocent in the prison system so you really have to vet your experts. Like expert testimony can be very compelling, but an expert usually doesn't make bold-faced accusations like these people did. Okay. So yeah, he would have loved the panic. Yes. Hoover was like that, but he would have loved it. But yeah, this is what happened to a lot of these people. And it took a long, long time. And the FBI director at the time made that statement. He says that these people are networked together and they're feeding each other's biases. They're feeding confirmation and cognitive biases. They're just feeding the fire, and they're not really examining anything they're saying critically because they've been to, you can't really see this stuff unless you've been to a seminar, or you can't really see this stuff until you've been to training. And that's kind of the way it worked. And the FBI director finally stepped in and said, yeah, this is garbage. You can't do that.
Of course, Michelle remembers.
Of course, he was accused of being part of the Satanic Church, of course, for saying so. So just so everybody's clear.
Inspired dozens of copycat memoirs, which further amplified the perception that satanic ritual abuse was widespread. But there was never any evidence of a...
Okay, I got to stop right there. There was never any evidence. There was never any evidence. This is why religion has to be kept in check. And I don't care what religion is, because any group of people can get a hold of some religious belief and do this kind of panic bullshit and then cause a whole bunch of harm to other people, especially if they get the political system and the judicial system on their side. It's an awful combination. The state and the church mixed together is the worst idea that human beings have ever had. Okay. And it needs to stop. Okay. It needs to stop. Take your religious beliefs, practice them by yourself, keep them out of my politics. And that's safe for everyone. Imagine if this has been Islamic people and they decided that certain things that Christians did was satanic and started locking up Christians. This is why, most of the founding fathers were Christian. The people that wrote the Constitution and signed off on it were Christians. I will acknowledge that. But all of them agreed that the best way to keep one version of Christianity from beating up on another version of Christianity was to keep them all out of the government. Okay. And so I want you to understand there was never any evidence that set off the panic. She is absolutely correct. When you look at all the cases, like there's literally books been written since about all these cases and how there was never any evidence that convicted a lot of these people. And that's the danger of religion. It's the danger of religion getting hold of a system in politics where they can weaponize it. And if you don't hold their beliefs, you don't agree with them, or you're doing something they disapprove of, they can absolutely crush you. This is why it has to stay out. The Satanic Panic is a great example of what happens when a certain group of Christians get control of the judicial system. Okay, it's really a good example of it. So yes, they are very much like the Satanic Panic types. It's the same playbook, Ray. It has always been the same playbook. When religions defend their faith, every apologist does this, okay, because they have no evidence, really, so they just make a lot of assertions. It's why they attack atheists with the moral argument, okay, like they say, I don't have any morality because I'm an atheist. It's the same thing that was happening in the Satanic Panic, well, you don't believe, you daycare workers are allowing women to go to work in the workplace. I don't believe that should happen. So we're going to accuse you of being part of a Satanist organization and destroy daycare centers. Okay. You don't think that that was some of their mind? I've got some land to sell you. Okay. So yeah, they were kind of deist Christians for the most part. I think one of the things they all had, even if they were fundamentalists, like, yeah, I want to be left alone. Probably one of the advantages of so many early settlers coming to America being different religions is they came here because their religion got persecuted in Europe, and they didn't want that to happen again. And so, yeah, keeping religion out of the state's a good way to do that. So you just wanted to sin? Okay. Well, you just wanted to do something. I'm not sure sin. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's like, yeah, I just want to sin. I just want to do this. I just want to do that. Yeah, it's kind of where it's gone. You know, it's like, this is the same thing that apologists definitely do. So, but yeah.
Satanic conspiracy. In 1994, a psychologist from the University of California researched over 12,000 accusations of ritual abuse, but found no substantiated reports of organized satanic groups who sexually abused children.
Huh. Isn't that weird? Like, she didn't find anything. Nothing. Zero. Zip. Nada. No evidence of any. I remember the Church of Satan at this time was like, no, that's bullshit. Like, but nobody believed them. Like, the Church of Satan, several of them just came out and said, we don't do that. Okay. Because when you really analyze the Church of Satan, they're atheists. Okay. And they're just making fun. Okay. They're making fun of other groups. So yeah, it's kind of, it's one of those things. So it is very insulting, but this is kind of what was happening back then. It's the same playbook, okay, as the apologists today. The apologists accuse people that don't agree as they are as lacking morality, okay? And yet they defend a book that advocates for slavery, repression, certain situations you can murder somebody. You know, if you look at what the Bible advocates and defends, it's interesting because I remember I was watching a clip, I can't remember from what, and the guy, you know, the woman's like, yeah, well, it says in the Bible that homosexuals are going to hell. And he's like, yeah, you know what else it says? It says I can sell my daughter into slavery to pay debts. What price should I ask for? You know, it's like, it's like, we don't do that in the Western world. And most Christians would recoil at that very idea, but it's in your damn book. Okay. It's in your damn book. And this is the same thing that was happening during the Satanic Panic. It's like, there's no evidence that there's satanic ritualistic cults connected with daycare centers at all. But the idea of us being superior morally to you that are using the daycare center allows us to make that accusation and have it stick. Literally point, if you're human, you're a sinner. And they made it's a rigged game. The whole gospel game is rigged. And I now say that a lot to theists, and they get pissed at me for saying it. But yes, but there was no substantial reports of well-organized satanic rings of people who sexually abused Christians. Nothing. Children, nothing. Zero. Okay. And she did like 1,200 cases of this stuff she looked at. So yeah, it infuriates me too. It makes me very angry because this is something that is still done. It's done in different ways. The playbook, however, is the same. Have something you dislike. How can we accuse that group of people being morally deficient compared to us? And then we have the moral right to judge them and initiate consequences with them. And then we're going to get control of some governmental entity to help us weaponize that. We're going to have a media that downplays it or sensationalize it because it sells papers or television time or ad time. And it infuriates me because a whole bunch of forces that can make money, that can do other things all together, come together. So, it becomes a real pain in the ass for a lot of people. It infuriates me too, because when I was back living it back then, it was just an irritation because I just wanted to play D&D with my friends and listen to Iron Maiden, you know. And because, you know, I love the music. I mean, hallowed be thy name. is one of the best displays of any musical score in a lot of ways to me. Like the vocals are outstanding. The guitar work is just stellar. The drumming, and yet it's a religious theme, and I get that. But I would listen to that, and my pastor would say that's an evil song. And I'm like, it's literally quoting a Bible verse, you dumbass. It's like it got infuriating to the point that was the kind of infuriating it was to me then. Now I look back at the after effects of how many people were imprisoned falsely, how many people's lives were ruined falsely, how many people had to change their name, move across the country because of false accusations of the Satanic Panic. And here's the real problem, Kyle. These Satanic Panics crop up again and again. This is just one example of many. Like there's always something that's demonic or devil worship or whatever, and people lose their livelihood over this shit. Okay, it's like it's infuriating because you ruin people's lives with these accusations over nothing for which you have no evidence. And when I saw this in the video, I'm like, oh my God, there's no connection whatsoever, and yet all this stuff happened. Promise to sacrifice something comes out of your house if you want, and it's your daughter. Yeah, we are the butt of a lot of this because in the Satanic Panic, it was a satanic church. Current apologists use atheists like those guys use Satanists. Okay, they come after atheists for a reason. Okay, it's a politically motivated, propaganda motivated reason. That's why they accuse us of not having character. That's why they accuse us of not having morals. That's why they accuse us of, literally, somebody accused us of, oh, you can eat babies and there would be no real, what stand against that? I don't know, my reason and stupidness and all that. So it's like, I cannot emphasize this enough. The playbook is the same with believers. When they want something to get rid of it, that's what they do. Okay, they find a way to demonize it, to engage in ad hominem character assassination, and atheists right now are the convenient whipping boy. Okay, and that's why I run this channel. Okay, that's why I wear silly hats. That's why I continue to push back against this nonsense, because atheism and deconversion from religion needs to be normalized. It needs to be like, yes, this is what happens when you become an adult. Okay, it's like, to me. Now, I could say, well, yes, they are being mature. If you believe something is fantasy, yeah, there are some that actually still think that, okay, that we eat babies. And it's like, no, I've never eaten a baby in my life. I joke about it, okay, because it's a stupid thing to think. But it's like, this is the level of your thought process, okay? But I know that there are people that know that I'm an atheist and they don't trust me. And I have never done anything to them because of that propaganda mill. Okay. Yeah, I can never eat one either. I love them. Yeah, not really clear on how's your so there's that. Yes.
In later years, as the panic died down, Pastor tried to distance himself from the claims he made in Michelle Remembers.
I'm not there to believe or not believe. I'm there to try and understand what they're trying to tell me of an experience, whether that has actually happened to them or that is their way of trying to express a profound pain that they've experienced.
Okay, I got to stop right there. But dude, you pass it off as a true story. And the one thing you have never done is said, you know what? Yeah, that was probably shit. Okay. And you want to know why you've never done that? You've made $1 million+ off this book. Okay. You're still probably making money off this book. Okay. People are talking about this book and then they want to buy it so that they can see what was in it. And so you're still making money off this book. And so you're still an asshole. Okay. So yeah, they should check themselves into prison. Yes. A counter satanic panic. I don't know if I want to do a panic. I want rationality. Usually when people get rational, things that are truthful get discovered. So yeah, he had a lot of excuses. Yeah, I'm here to push back. Okay. Like my whole thing with atheists is they're so mystified by Christians and believers. And it's like, I've done the Neil deGrasse Tyson line that he did at one late night show several times, and several others have done. It's like, I simply believe in one less God than you do. You don't believe in all these other gods. So you're an atheist as far as those gods, are you not? Well, yeah, I guess I am. It's like, well, I've just dismissed the whole concept. Okay. Why is it that I take all this shit because of that? That I've just dismissed. I dismiss, Yahweh God, just like a lot of Hindus do, just like a lot of Buddhists do. It's like, it's just like many other religions do. They don't believe in that they have their own holy scriptures. So why aren't you going after them? So rationality outcry. There you go. There's a thought. But yes, there's definitely some emotion attached to this thing with me. But the Satanic Panic is just such a good illustration of what happens when society goes horribly wrong with religion, because I just think about all the people who spent jail time and prison time over so-called experts in satanic cultery whose testimony got them convicted, along with some bullshit testimony that we got from kids because we can lead kids on in a discussion. And we now know that. So it's like, it's like, make up your mind, Larry. Yeah.
Neither he nor Smith ever publicly renounced the book's allegations. This strange period of moral hysteria serves as a reminder of what can happen when we abandon the pursuit of facts for a more sensational fiction. The question is, have we learned our lesson? I'm Lisa Bryn Rundle.
Okay, that's kind of the end of the video there. She's kind of going to her spiel about how this has kind of become a whole series on her channel on the CBC. So I don't know how old this is, but yeah, she's going to wrap it up here. But it's an interesting question she asked. Have we really advanced beyond this? Have we? I don't think we have. I think it still goes on. Every year somebody comes up with their new, hopefully, version of the Satanic Panic where something's going to happen. And every year something happens. And it's like, it keeps getting pushed. It keeps getting done. I think you might be right. There's always going to be the next witch hunt, because people like witch hunts. They like the sensationalism of a witch hunt. And the Satanic Panic lasted a long time in the 80s and 90s because there was a culture of Christianity. The Christian religious right was much more powerful. And I know a lot of people don't like to think that way. Like, they look at Christian nationalism. Like, if I were to do a comparison between Christian nationalism today has to fight and struggle and claw and scratch. Christian nationalism, Christianity right back then didn't have to claw and scratch. Whatever they said just oftentimes just went. Okay. QAnon is definitely a satanic panic on steroids. It still exists, but it gets fought against. Okay. And back then, what you had is a culture that was so Christian and so much more fundamentally so that a lot of times this stuff just didn't get fought. That's why all these people got convicted on expert testimonies, because nobody said, oh, wait a minute, is there any evidence? Nobody cared about the evidence. That's how bad it was. Okay, you just mentioned Satan was involved and the Satanic Church was involved, and bam, they put you in jail. Okay, and so it's the real problem is the validity of evidence. Okay, so it's like, I just remember that every time Christians talked back then, it seemed to get done, and it was scary sometimes how much it got done. Now, maybe we're seeing a revival of that. I really hope not, because looking back at it, I don't want this to happen again. There's a lot of people that'll get, convicted of stuff, but it's like, yes. But yeah, this is the kind, I think so. Here, hold on. I can tell you if you can still buy it. It's still for sale. The original hardcover, you can buy from other people. It's $50, so it's expensive, but it's still for sale. I don't know if they're still printing it, but it's still for sale. So, Oh, thank you. The reason why it resonated with me so much, Anne Marie, is the crap I went through as a kid. Like, and there's the other thing. Like, we're talking about all these people that went to jail, but I want you to understand that in every church that was believing in the satanic panics line, they were giving their people a hard time about what they were involved with. Like, and I think a lot of that was used by pastors and church leadership to make sure you got to spend all your time with Jesus. Like, you can't spend time with your friends playing D&D, and you can't spend time alone listening to metal. You know, you can't put an Iron Maiden record on because it's competition for Jesus. And so, as much as I can, you know, the obvious bad evil of the satanic panic is in front of everybody, but there's this whole ground and atmosphere that happened back then that really shaped a lot of people's brains about Christianity and everything else. And I also have to point out that Christian bookstores back then were everywhere, and they were very lucrative. It was very lucrative to go into a Christian bookstore. I don't know if too many Christian bookstores would say that today. Probably still is, but back then, Frank Peretti comes out with the next book, and bam, it's off the shelf. You know, it's like it's. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like this resonated with me because it's a very much a good deconversion issue for me. A lot of us still have scars from when we were younger, when we were youth in the church, and and a lot of the mentality of spiritual forces exist, and I need a force to fight them. You know, it's like superstition on steroids in the church at the time. And it was just like, I can't imagine that those of us that grew up in this time aren't still affected by some of the stuff that we heard and saw back then, like book burnings. I had other than Indiana Jones, you know, in The Last Crusade, seeing somebody burning books in public, I only saw that in churches back then. Like, only churches were burning books as protests, and they would get a hold of the media and get it as a story on the media that these evil satanic books were stuff. And it's like, we should have heeded the warnings back then. Like, if somebody's burning books, I've got a question. I got a lot of questions. Like, what's so evil about the book? Like, yeah, it's like, yeah, bookstores are kind of on the down, I guess. I still like going to the bigger ones that still exist, because that's the way you have to survive. Like, you have to have a big bookstore and buy in bulk and stuff. But yeah, I still, we had this discussion last stream too. It's like, I still appreciate the aesthetic of a book in my hand over one on a digitized screen, though I've done both and can do book. But I still love going to bookstores that still exist, because most of them are also coffee shops now. I think that's the way they've survived, is they put out a coffee shop and they put out damn good coffee. And so somebody stops into the coffee, sees a book, maybe sits down, reads for a bit. I can't decry that at all. So, but yes, I do miss bookstores too. I do miss them. I mean, it got bad in one of my churches. I have to confess, but this was a decision by the church board, not by me. I opposed the decision, but one of my churches had a book burning, and I opposed it. And I told them why. I said, if you can't deal with what's in that book and you have to burn it so it doesn't exist, then I would say that you're on more shaky ground intellectually than whoever wrote that book. Okay. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I mean, there's plenty of Christian books and stuff like that. And a lot of people, maybe they should be burned, but I would never burn a Christian book or a Bible. Like, I just don't do that. Okay. It's like, I don't see the point. So yes. Yeah, it's kind of, Dragon Rider, I can consider that angle, because at the time, it also could have been deflection, because a lot of stories come out of the 80s and 90s of not just priest abuse, but pastors. Like, I lost track of the number of pastors that caught in sexual infidelity in the 80s and 90s. I just lost track. Like, Jimmy Swaggart was the big one. But there were a whole bunch of others at the time. And it's so non-news even today now that I imagine something happens every month now and nobody even notices because it's so common. But there was a lot of, I imagine it was a good way of not just projecting, but deflecting the fact that a lot of preachers were also molesting kids. Okay. So it's like, I honestly do think that was part of the problem. It's like there's more than just a projection. There's like, look over here. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Look over here. Look at the great powerful Oz. Yeah, kind of thing. So, Borders went out of business. Barnes and Noble, I think, has stayed alive because of their coffee shop mostly, and they buy books in bulk, and they have lower operating costs. You really have to do that as a bookstore. Yeah, and the funny thing is, Elizabeth, I was looking at data from Amazon. People still buy books that are paper more than digital, I believe. It's still higher selling. So yeah, I don't burn books. I just don't. I never understood it. But yeah, there was a big fight between me and the board on that one. They still had their burning, and I still attended, but I stood way in the back and I said nothing. And when people asked me why I wasn't saying anything, I'm like, I don't agree with this. And there was about 3 or 4 people in that church that stood next to me because they didn't agree with it either. So it was a divisive issue in my church, and probably why that church ended up closing eventually. It was just one of the things that happened. So I was the last pastor of that church. After I left, they had 3 people left, and so that. Yeah, there's still places where bookstores live. There's still places where bookstores live. So it's like there's a couple of them around here. So I can always go to Grand Rapids, and there's a couple. So yeah, that's the thing about book burnings. I've never met a book burning that I couldn't say, you're trying to conceal the truth of something, aren't you? It's like you're trying to cover something up, and you don't like what somebody said, so you're trying to get rid of what they said because they said it in a book. I can definitely buy that. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap things up. If some of you haven't seen some of the artwork that the lovely Earl has produced, I haven't seen her tonight, but she's been busy, and doing a lot of things, and I know what that's like. So, but this is the latest piece of artwork from I Killed Earl. She got this to me Thursday. So, but yeah, I appreciated the artwork. I know that she's going to add Anne Marie in there somewhere. But yeah, I kind of felt, it's funny, but I felt a lot of warm fuzzy. This is a good encapsulation of the last year, just in chat and everything. It's just, everybody's here. So there's that. Yeah, I don't have any bookstores in my town either. There are stores that have books as part of them, and that's about it. So, but I usually have to order books if I want to read them. Yeah, she's going to update this, I think. She said so. So, but yeah. Yeah, you're there, and your dog's there, the hellhound's there. Earl's there. She's the Care Bear with the peach because of her flat hiney, as she says. Cranky's there. A whole bunch of you. Captive Yesk's in there. There's a bunch of you. Of course, we put a selection of the Mormonians in there crying. So, and all kinds of stuff. But yes, Fags decked out in rainbow sunglasses, and our whale rights friends. And when I first saw this, I actually teared up a little bit because it's a good reflection of this last bit of my year streaming. And some of you have been great in chat, and I've just enjoyed the experience because of a lot of the people represented in this picture. So that's kind of flat pancake booty. Yes. Yeah. You guys are awesome. So it was like, it was a good encapsulator. I teared up a little bit on this one because a lot of you are the reason I'm still doing this. So, and your support means a lot to me, whether you can give a dime, but you're here every week and you're keeping me going. And that just means a lot to me. The weather has changed. I'm feeling much more energetic. So I'm hoping things that are going So yeah, she's doing better. I don't know. I tried to encourage her to go to the doctor that evening, but I guess the inflammation died down and she's much better. I know she was feeling really good Thursday. So, but yeah, she's autistic, and like me, she'll disappear off the radar of her friends for 2 days and not with no explanation. And I don't panic about that. So I just don't, because I know that's just the nature of the beast. And, I'm with that with my friends too. Like I'll disappear for 2 weeks and show back up. It's like, I mean, we've said it before, Fangs can be anything. And he prefers it in order to nibble on your heart better. And I'm speaking with the Holy Bunny hat here. In order to nibble on your heart better, always identify Fangs as you would identify yourself. That way his empathy is stronger and he'll nibble on your heart a lot better. Yeah. Go listen to some Maiden. Go do it. It'll cleanse your soul. The human air raid siren, the length that guy can hold a note. Oh my God. Nothing like an opera trained person doing heavy metal, is there? Yeah, it's kind of my favorite time of the week too. By the way, I'm moving more with all my chats into more of a chat atmosphere, support people who are atheists and deconverting atmosphere. I was hoping that some intellectual theists would show up and chat with me, but so far no go. So it just hasn't been a thing. So it hasn't been a thing. Yes, thanks, Fangs. Fangs nibbles on your heart. And, he purifies your vegetables. He doesn't have to purify carrots, just remind you of that, but you can make a carrot more holy by circumcising it. I'm speaking with a hat on, so I want to remind people of their religious duties. And the biggest religious duty is you could take everything I just said and what Fang says in the Fang Dammits and don't have to follow them if you don't want to, because they're not really commandments. They're more like guidelines than actual rules. So some of them are rules like, consensual sex. He is the God of good consensual sex, not just consensual sex, but it has to be good. So, so there's that. Yeah, you can do that. You can absolutely do that, Kyle. If you want Fangs to be big and muscular, we keep him as a cute little deity to make him less offensive to others. But yeah, I love the plumper dad bod Fangs and and the what me worry. So yeah, there's a lot of people on this channel that are on the spectrum too. So like we're autistic spectrum, gender spectrums, all the spectrums. So yes, but nibble. Let's see. I'm still going to promote this one. This is not mine or Earl's, but I saw it and I laughed so hard that I had to put it up here for Cranky. But I know he already has the franchise of Long John Silver's with its horrible seafood. But I'm thinking we should take over Crack-A-Barrel for him, and we can have a true tentacle-based menu. I think that would be great. Or anything that tentacles capture. So there's that. But yes. But yeah, thanks everybody. I think I'm going to call it a night. Even though one member of the Unholy Trinity isn't here, we all wish you well. May Fangs nibble on your hearts. May he always be there. He doesn't really believe in prayer. He's an atheist God that draws strength from non-belief. So the more you non-belief, the stronger Fangs gets. So, so there's that. So thanks everybody for stopping by. I appreciate all of you coming by. This has been a great stream tonight. I hope I got across the point that these kind of panics happen all the time. This is just the most notable one to me and the largest one. So yes, to quote Captain Barbarossa, yes, it's more like guidelines than actual rules. So make sure you're thinking about your morality and thinking about what you're doing and all that is better. But may Fangs nibble on your hearts. May he purify your vegetables with his pointy teeth. Make sure you circumcise your carrots and let him nibble on your hearts and make you more and more like him. Nom nom and nom and all that stuff. Appreciate all of you. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. We'd be happier if you do. And don't waste all that stuff on the trappings of religion and faith, because that's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, folks, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you all next time on Rapid Fire on Tuesday. I'll see you then.